Hello, everyone. I am Teresa Smolaric, and I wanted to welcome you on behalf of the Cancer Genomics Consortium Education Committee, and we are excited to have the first of our webinars in 2022. We also are planning webinars for April and June, and the planned speakers for upcoming webinars are Dr. Wexberg, who will be talking about constitutional whole genome methylation, and Dr. Gu, who will be talking about transcriptome analysis and B-ALL. Before I turn it over to Dr. Janelle Hodge to introduce our speaker, if you have any questions during today's webinar, please enter the question into the chat box, and I will take care of asking them to Dr. Indave. This webinar is being recorded, and we will post it to the CGC website. So Janelle, I am turning it over to you now. So next slide, please.
It is my great pleasure to introduce Iciar Indave. She is a medical doctor and an epidemiologist. She has a PhD in preventative medicine and public health. She is currently a researcher at IARC, which is the International Agency for Research on Cancer. This is an agency of the World Health Organization. Iciar is a systemic reviewer scientist for the WHO Classification of Tumours program and coordinates the IC3R. That's the International Collaboration for Cancer Classification and Research. She assists in conducting systemic reviews, as well as exploring how using systemic processes can minimize bias when gathering and summarizing evidence to inform effective decision-making. Through focusing on international collaborations in tumor classifications and promoting evidence-based pathology, her goal is to translate research into better information for clinicians and pathologists, as well as more accurate diagnoses for patients. Today, she will be describing the IC3R initiative, including efforts to identify knowledge gaps, optimize and standardize evidence generation in cancer research, as well as the potential for future collaborations. Welcome, Iciar.
Hi, thank you, Janelle. Thank you for the nice introduction, and hello to everybody. So yeah, I'm the systematic reviewer of the WHO Classification of Tumours group, and I have been coordinating now for a bit over a year the International Collaboration for Cancer Classification and Research, IC3R. And I'm here to provide you some insights in this new initiative that we think is very exciting and growing rapidly. So very briefly to introduce you to the way I have structured this presentation, I will just show you who the classification of tumors are, so the small group that is running this program. I will then talk about the collaboration per se, and finally give you some insights in a few of the projects that are now ongoing under the framework of IC3R. So the WHO Classification of Tumours. This is a program that is probably very well known by all of you who are somehow linked to pathology or cancer diagnosis, but less well known if you are not doing pathology or cancer research or need classification of tumors for something. We are a small group of pathologists, researchers, and project managers who are at the International Agency for Research on Cancer of the WHO. We are in Lyon, and we are responsible for the production and the edition of the WHO Blue Books, which is the publication that summarizes this classification. In general, the program, so the classification of tumors, has 4 big areas, or covers 4 big areas. So the biggest one is obviously the production of the books of the classification. Within 2020, there were 3 of them published, and now are other 4 under development. And there is also the Blue Books Online, where the classification is fully available online. Then we have a small histopathology lab, which mainly runs collaboration with research groups in doing the pathology part. So for example, big project as the mutographs of cancer or Stampa or ESCAPE are under the collaborations that we are having as part of the histopathology lab. Then we have a group of IT experts. So it's our part of the group that dedicates to the database and computational tools. BBOS is the system, the database that is used to produce the classification, and BBEST is our expert selection app, which has been recently also developed and is used to select experts for the editorial process on based on their publications records, and less based on who knows who and a network of experts. And then finally, the fourth part is IC3R, is our collaboration, is the International Collaboration for Cancer Classification and Research. You may find already some information online as the white paper, but I will focus in this presentation on how we built this up, why and how it was presented. So we clearly think that IC3R is a unique forum for evidence generation, standard setting, and best practices in tumor classification, and therefore in cancer research in general. And we started this initiative mainly because we realized that there are many challenges that have to be faced when you are classifying tumors, but there are mainly two major ones that we really needed urgently to be addressed. One is that we realized that the information that is needed, or the evidence that is needed to classify a tumor, is of multidimensional nature. It means we do not receive only information from one specialized field. We receive it from many different fields in many different reporting styles with many different aims and outcome definition. And this, together with the important information overload that we all have in each of these small science fields, or not that small scientific fields, both together make it really difficult to assess evidence each time you have to take a decision when classifying a tumor type. So to address mainly these major challenges, but also other that we have been identifying and will continue to identify, we decided to analyze the situation. And there we realized that we are a small group of people that works together with an editorial board and with experts, so becoming a bigger group that produces this classification. And we have a secretariat at IARC that makes it possible to become this published as an online service, but also as the books. But we have a huge scientific community composed of different specialties and dimensions that feeds information, that is publishing information continuously, that we will need to use in this process. So our small group together with the bigger group of editorial board and experts. And there is no communication between these two major communities, or the small group and the bigger scientific community. And this is where the initiative thought is needed, how to produce a proper communication from the scientific community, so producing the evidence for the classification, but also from the classification, producing information that would reach the scientific community on the gaps that we have identified and the problems that we are facing. So we defined a project, or better, a program, IC3R, with a vision of creating an international collaboration that would be able to provide high-level, up-to-date evidence, and secondary, also to promote standards and enhance best practices that could underpin the classification of tumors. And our mission is clearly to provide these standards for research and for the appraisal of evidence in tumor classification and cancer diagnosis, always facilitating a rapid translation into clinical diagnostic practice. So our aims were defined as that we want to harmonize cancer-related research and data generated, at least among IC3R members at the beginning, hopefully in the future in general. To enhance international standard setting for analytical procedures and diagnosis, we also aim to define quality standards for certification of research laboratories, which does not exist for the moment. And we do aim to produce evidence synthesis and evaluations for tumor classification and cancer research in general. These should help us also to identify information and research gaps in the fields, and to promote data sharing and knowledge exchange among this scientific community. Finally, we do aim to promote evidence practice in general, and we want to encourage communication between health systems, the industry, and regulatory bodies. So this is our set of aims, and to be able to address them, we took and defined our framework in a way that the communication that I have been mentioning between the group of producing the classification and the scientific community can be coordinated by a collaboration. And the collaboration would be IC3R. IC3R aims to coordinate this communication by producing a set of clearly defined deliverables. So, for example, we aim to produce evidence-based scientific production, so evidence synthesis in all their variety. We aim also to produce a set of recommendations and best practices. Sorry. And we aim to set the standards for accreditation and produce information systems that help to share information. Sorry. So to do so, we defined a consortium of institutions, so not of members, but of institutions. Sorry. With a documented interest in the field. So all institutions that become partners of IC3R have a documented interest in the field of tumor classification and are non-for-profit. That's the only minimum definition that we set. And the contribution of these members of these institutions allows us to coordinate and to create a stable managerial structure. And that means to be stable in our planning and have a strategy that goes well into the future. Nevertheless, we just started. It means that our first year was fully dedicated to coordinating and generating a structure, an organigram, communication strategies. And we recently started to design the work stream and start some projects addressing some of the goals that we had defined. This is how our organizational structure looks like. It's not complicated. We have a steering group that composed of representatives from core members and the coordinating part, which is IARC, so the WHO Classification of Tumours program. And then we have, in addition, another type of members, which is we call full members, who are not sitting at the steering group and are not part of the decision-taking body, but they do contribute to projects, lead projects, and are enabled to produce results for the collaboration. We have finally also defined some type of entities that we call associate entities, which are not part of our collaboration, but who somehow contribute or collaborate in single projects and somehow are interested in the collaboration and do participate in some activities. In our framework, we also directly defined the 5 initial work streams, functional work streams, in which we would embed our projects. So we have an evidence-based practice work stream. We have a work stream on international database coordination, quality in research, computational pathology, and molecular pathology and genetics are the remaining work streams for IC3R at the moment. Only 3 of these work streams have, in fact, already ongoing projects or planned projects. In the evidence-based practice work stream, we do have several ongoing projects. One is the evidence-based pathology project. Then we had BBEST as the expert selection hub, which has already been finalized. The EVIPAD project dedicated to produce a training module, and WCT EVIMAP, which is the evidence gap mapping project. Quality in research has one running project, which is the creation of an ISO standard for research labs, but there are some others in light blue here planned, which may be initiated in the future. And then computational pathology has an autopsy reporting system running, which is not yet really ongoing, but is collecting data and trying to promote it. And then we have a project called DataState to validate digital pathology algorithms that is run by our partner from the Oslo office from the FDA. Also in light blue, some additional projects that we are planning but haven't been started yet. So if we want to have a look at some of the projects, I would say that we should focus first on the evidence-based practice workstream, because it's the workstream where we have most of it currently undergoing, and where we also lead as the coordinators the full workstream. So the evidence-based pathology project had a first meeting, and a broad proposal was written, and we searched for funding. That's how we presented it for funding. So it is a project that has the vision to generate evidence-based informed decisions in pathology and tumor classification, and that to do so we had a set of goals, which includes the developing of methods, tools, trainings, and hub of systematic reviews where we could register and promote the publication of such evidence synthesis. We thought we could initially propose a strategy of 3 years and develop this in a set of work package to be delivered by different partners. So we proposed a work package on methods development, where we thought we could developed adapted evidence levels for the field of pathology, and an adapted rapid review methodology specifically for the evidence synthesis needed for the classification. A second work package would provide the training that is needed, but also training for trainers. A third work package would be focused on a toolbox to develop systematic reviews and software assistance, as a proposal that was made for a project called MasterPath that would create an algorithm, a machine learning algorithm that could assist in the selection procedure of systematic reviews in the field of pathology. Then a fourth work package would be focus on registration of protocols and titles, and the management of pending topics. And finally, a fifth work package would be assisting in creating a network of methodological focal points that could help people, clinicians or pathologists or researchers who are interested in developing systematic reviews, assist them in this effort, providing the methodological support that is needed when you are trying to do this as a non-expert. And finally, a sixth work package to evaluate the full project and see if it has the impact that would have been expected. That was essentially what we presented, and we realized that it hasn't been accepted as well as we expected. It seems to be too complicated and too broad. So finally, we moved on and subdivided part of this work package and part of these aims into single projects. One of the projects we developed as a sub-project was BBES, the expert selection app, which has been submitted for publication. We are waiting results, and it is already under use by our editorial board. So experts are selecting using this application. And we are searching for funding to improve, to generate a version 2 that has improved functionalities and could help to even select better experts. Then there is the EVIPAD, evidence-based pathology training module development, which is on the development currently, partly funded in collaboration with the Cochrane Netherlands, in collaboration with the Universidade de Campinas in Brazil and University of Ulm. This is a project that will produce, as a result, an online training module, hopefully freely available from our platform at IARC. And then finally, currently, the bigger project that is under development and waiting for a decision, we presented it to a Horizon Fund grant proposal, and well, it has been included in the 6th edition of the WHO Classification of Tumours strategy, and is meant to map the evidence for this classification in a way that we could produce a living tool where people could access to this information openly online. So if we divide this project also in the proposals as it stands, the idea was to produce an online open very easily accessible tool, which would allow users to explore evidence that has been published to inform the WCT, but also cancer research in general. The goal was really to map all the available evidence for the whole classification and to do this with a living approach. Living approach, understand as continuously updated, so each 3 or 4 months, so that the resulting tool would really be able to inform decisions over time in research and policy making or the classification. To do so, we came up with a mixed method approach and stepwise, where we thought as a first step, we would have to invest a lot of time in developing an appropriate framework. So to see how we have to map the evidence for something as broad as the classification of tumors. In a second step, we would really map the actual evidence, so do the actual evidence gap map. And then in a third step, we would establish or we would create a relational database that could serve to produce an online tool that would be easily accessible and understandable and permit users or researchers or pathologists to navigate the information that the gaps have found. This, as we said, would happen in 3 phases, where the second phase is the most relevant one, which is where we produce this type of evidence gap maps. An evidence gap map looks this way and is essentially a modified evidence synthesis method. So it has something to do with systematic reviews, but it is a method where we only show the evidence that is out there and we do not summarize the content of the evidence. So it helps to set the basis and to inform future research, but it will not summarize the evidence that exists, but detect evidence gap maps and pockets of low-level evidence. So to better show you, this is, you can't read now the columns and the rows, but that's not the important part. What I wanted to show you is that evidence gap maps are able to produce this visual summary where you can very, very rapidly assess where the gaps in the research evidence are or pockets of low-level evidence. So how do we understand what the level of evidence is? Well, the bubbles show you in size the number of studies, and in color, it shows you the level of evidence assessed as by the commonly understood evidence levels of the Oxford Center for Evidence-Based Medicine, so based on the risk of bias of the study design. That means if you have here, look, without being able to read what it is about, you know that here you have a bigger gap, here you have low level evidence almost everywhere with red bubbles, and in some places with a lot of evidence, but majority being of low level. The framework that we developed, as I said, is in this case, you have on the top the tumor types, each single tumor type, and in the rows you have the tumor descriptors that we use for the classification. So from epidemiology to molecular pathology, histopathology, so the description of the tumors that is used to classify a tumor. So this is just a general idea of what we are trying to produce. We have started, these are the preliminary results of the lung, of tumors of the lung. We have also preliminary results of tumors, of the tumors of the thymus, but obviously without funding, it will take us a very, very long time to classify the whole classification, since we will probably have to produce hundreds of these maps. So far for the evidence-based practice functional work stream, but if we go and have a look at the other work streams, you will find that there is a lot also ongoing. However, we have started recently, so there are not many results to present yet for most of the projects. For example, quality in research, so regarding the ISO standards for research labs, we are awaiting for the ISO to give us the possibility to start a project, because they have first to close updates of related standards, and we should start this year to develop the accreditation, and the plan is, I think, for 3 years. In computational pathology, as I said, the autopsy reporting system is implemented, but we are still searching the way to promote it among pathologists and to start to have a real important data collection. And this data set to validate digital pathology algorithms is under the lead of our partner from the Oslo office, and well, they are still collecting data and recruiting, but they have also recently updated results, and we have on the webpage some information regarding that. So this is in summary what we do in IC3R so far. Again, I have to insist, we are just 1 year and a bit old. We are starting. We hope that we will be able to soon produce this concrete deliverables that we are all the time talking about, because if we talk about the expected impact that we think we will have, we have to say that we expect that this concrete deliverables will help to identify and to address the key elements that are necessary to move forward tumor classification and cancer research in general. We have already defined at least 5 groups of key deliverables. So for once, the adapted levels of evidence you have heard me talking about, and resulting evidence gap maps, but also knowledge and data sharing media. So we are in conversation with several experts and representatives of this. Then, as we said, for quality management and best practices, we are expecting to produce the ISO accreditation and best practices. And obviously, we are working on higher level evidence synthesis, so systematic reviews, evidence gap maps, scoping reviews, and all type of related methods. Finally, here are the ISO accreditations, and here it's best practice and methods development. So we believe that this all together will provide the necessary high quality information that is needed to inform decisions in the future for the WHO classification of tumors, and that will help to move cancer research worldwide on the next level and on a more evidence-based approach, or having it with a more evidence-based approach. You will find already some publications on the net. At the webpage, you will have a summary of them, and there are now also several under submission, and we expect to have them soon out, informing people on IC3R and what we are doing at IC3R. So thank you very much. I hope I got your interest in this, and I'm happy to answer questions that you may have.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Indave. If you could go to the next slide, please.
Yes.
I just wanted to put a plug in for our annual meeting for August. There is a call for abstracts that are due in February. Go to cancergenomics.org, and we look forward to the abstracts, which help really shape our meeting, and you don't want to miss out. So we do have some questions in the chat. How frequently do you anticipate updates to the Blue Book content for different cancer types? And you are on mute. And you are still on mute.
Now it's working. Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
Sorry. So yeah, that has changed recently. So in the 4th edition and the 3rd edition, the common thing was that Blue Books were really, really slow updating. So it means you had maybe a full edition of all systems in 10 years or something similar. During the 5th edition, so the current ongoing edition that will soon, I think in a year, will the edition be finished. We managed to reduce this to 6 years. So the full edition should be totally updated in a 5 to 6 years time, which is amazing if you have a look at the amount of information that has to be reviewed and updated each time.
Thank you. There is another question. How can academic pathologists get involved with the IC3R project?
Well, thank you. That's a very good question. We would be answering any email that we receive, and we would be very happy to receive any suggestions or initiatives. As I said, we obviously invite any academic institution to become a member of IC3R, but if not, there is this role as an associate entity where we can initiate and collaborate on single projects, and we support also projects that are guided or led by an academic institution, but helps to address IC3R goals. So I would invite you to write an email directly to IC3R@IARC.com, and we will answer you, and I'm sure we can guide you to the best process possible. So either associate entity, becoming a member, or a strict collaboration.
Thank you. And there are some related types of questions for trainees to how could they get involved, and what would your advice be to them if they aim to be involved after their training? So it's kind of a continuum where you've got those that are already in academics versus the trainees, which are part of an academic institution. So is there a role for trainees, and how could they be better involved?
Yes, so the thing is that in fact, as I said, we are still developing and growing and trying to build everything up. So there is not a single way to collaborate now with IC3R, and we are happy to explore new ways. But for the moment, we have been exploring, for example, for trainees, residents, registers in different medical specialties that are able to do research stays with us. So that's one of the opportunities that we have for the moment. We do not have fellowships so far. We do not have funded fellowships for the moment, even though that might be in the future possible. At least we would love to. But we do have also the ability, and usually try to convince people who would like to perform systematic reviews that somehow meet the needs of the classification or of IC3R, to provide methodological support. So there's no need to be present and to do a stage with us. We can also collaborate from abroad and help you to develop a systematic review and evidence synthesis as an evidence gap map on a topic that you're interested in. And finally, there's obviously the idea that we want to produce training as the training module, but also we do have the ability to, for example, I collaborate often with the University of Ulm, where we do give seminars and talks on evidence-based pathology and help to train the younger generations, and also to generate a bit of interest in this field. So I would say this is so far what we can offer, but as I said, we are open for new initiatives, new suggestions, new ideas, since the good thing of being young and as an institution is that we have the possibility to create new things and open new ways.
Thank you. Do you know if there are any plans to include radiology imaging for tumor classification or characterization?
Very good question. Thank you. Yes, in fact, it has already been included. The 5th edition, one of the new incorporations, I would say, is to incorporate radiologists to the editorial board and to have radiological assessment. I do know that there is no classification based on radiology so far, so that might be a future thing. But for the moment, we do have already included radiologists in our editorial board, and you can see in all 5th edition books that radiological aspects have been included in the tumor descriptor. So as I told you, by tumor type, we have all the same structure for each tumor type, describing it with the same sections, and radiology is one of the criteria that in the 5th edition have been included where relevant. Obviously, there are tumor types where it isn't relevant.
Thank you. There is another question with the tools that are going to be developed by IC3R, will they be made publicly available?
Yes, that's 100% yes. The idea of IC3R is to have all open access, even though we are still facing some challenges with funding. For example, if we want to do the evidence gap map tool available for everybody, but the aim is to do it openly accessible for everybody. It might take a while, but the aim is defined as that.
Thank you. And Patty Myron has asked the ideas for the CGC collaboration. So how can we as a community help IC3R?
Yes, well, that's something we had already conversations on it, I think. And in my head, I could imagine many potential collaborations and many points where what CGG does and what we do has common interests and points. For the first and all, I would say it's important, or it would be interesting to coordinate our efforts methodologically, and for the evidence synthesis that you are producing and that we aim to produce, to have common standards and be able to use them and to informed decisions in the classification and informed decisions in your consortium. But for example, we are also looking for this huge amount of evidence gap maps that we will have to do for the best experts to do in the single topics, the evidence gap maps. And obviously in genomics, that's a very big common interest. Then I think methods development and setting reporting standards for research is something we could collaborate on. I think it's very important to start thinking about this multidimensional nature I have been talking about of the information that is fed in tumor classification. And one of the big challenges of this nature that the way the different specialties report on one and the single tumor type or cancer is very different, and it hinders it makes it impossible to summarize properly the evidence, and sometimes you can't use and assess in the same way evidence produced by genomics and by histopathology for the same cancer type. And that's, I think, something that we could address together. So, and it's one of the most pressing issues: reporting recommendations and standard setting.
Thank you. There is another request in here to be able to show your website again, so that people could, is that easily obtainable?
Oh yeah, wait, one more. There it is. I'm happy to provide also a PDF of the presentation or of the slides if you want to share that with the participants.
Yes, the slides should be posted to the CGC website, so we'll have that as well. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. So I just really wanted to thank you so very much for this interesting topic and for the talk, and for your time as well. So if there's nothing else, I wanted to thank everybody for joining us, and I look forward to your participation in future webinars. Thank you.
Thank you very much all for participating. Oops.